If you were Brad Pitt trapped in the middle of a global zombie outbreak, what would you do? Everyone around you has suddenly been transformed into a horde of feral ankle biters with superhuman speed and agility, and in the end, your only hope for survival is to beat the disease at its own game. I hope you brought your plot armor, because we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the zombie apocalypse in World War Z. This unsuspecting family is about to have the most terrifying day of their lives. Early one morning while stuck in a traffic jam somewhere in Center City, Philadelphia, former United Nations operative turned family man Gary Lane is playing a game of 20 questions with his wife Karen and their two school-aged daughters Rachel and Connie. It seems like a normal day at first, but they can't help but notice the unusual amount of helicopters that are constantly flying overhead, and a few pedestrians out on the sidewalk who look like they're running away from something. Curious, Jerry turns on the radio and the news reporter mentions something about a global rabies outbreak. But what they don't realize is that the disease isn't rabies at all. They're about to be caught in a worldwide zombie apocalypse. Just then, a police officer on a motorcycle speeds between the lanes and takes out their side mirror without so much as slowing down. Seconds later, an explosion rocks the street just a few blocks up ahead, and everyone in the area immediately starts to panic. Another officer urges Jerry to stay in the car when, in the blink of an eye, he's absolutely obliterated by a speeding garbage truck. Thinking quickly, Gary slams the car into gear and begins following behind the truck as it plows a path through the cars ahead. The driver, having become infected with his foot still jammed on the throttle, they're able to make it safely onto a side street, but while Jerry and his wife are focused on the kids, they end up getting violently T-boned by crossing traffic, totaling their car. Luckily, all four of them survive the accident unarmed, but the real danger is only just getting started. As Jerry hustles his family out of the wreck, he sees that some of the members of the panicking crowd have been transformed into what can only be described as a horde of ferocious zombies, sprinting full speed after their terrified victims. Okay, holy sh**. Mondays, am I right? I mean, I've heard of people saying that their morning commute is killer, but this one is just ridiculous. I'll be here all week. Poor Jerry here was just trying to get his kids to soccer practice, or wherever it is that they were going. But now, it looks like they're going to be practicing a much different kind of sport. How to run for your absolute f***ing life. Think of it like playing tag against a group of Olympic sprinters, and if they catch you, then you die a horrible death. Sounds fun, right? The good news is that Jerry and his family have a level of plot armor that would give Jason Statham in The Meg a run for his money, and that it's going to take more than just a little zombie apocalypse to slow him down. As for the rest of us though, who would probably die in approximately the first 15 seconds, we're going to have to rely on a lot more than just our dashing good looks, and a very particular set of skills to make it through this in one piece. So for those of us watching who don't also just so happen to be Brad Pitt with secret agent training, here's a few ideas for how we might make it out of this situation like this alive. Zombies. We know them, we love them, sometimes we even are them. But one thing's for sure, when it comes to horrifying survival scenarios, nothing feels quite more like home than a good old-fashioned zombie apocalypse. Whether you're a cowboy hat-wearing deputy from Georgia or a freelance journalist trapped in a Colorado shopping mall, I think it's safe to say that this is a block that we've all been around once or twice before. They're slower than a snail with a broken toe, and basically just shuffle around waiting for you to come along and put them out of their misery with a headshot. So you're probably wondering, what's the big deal here? Just walk at a brisk pace in the opposite direction and you should be fine. Right? Not exactly. You see, these aren't your average George Romero type zombies. These are more like the 28 Days Later kind, which technically makes them infected, and that, my fellow survivors, changes everything. Unlike the more traditional varieties that are corpses reanimated by some sort of black magic, these zombies here are the result of otherwise healthy humans becoming infected with a previously unknown rabies-type virus that's spread from person to person with a bite. They're faster than the employees at a Chick-fil-A drive-thru, and angrier than me when I want some Chick-fil-A and realize that it's Sunday. This variety of sprinters in particular don't feel any pain and have no fear of danger, and can only be permanently killed by a clean headshot or being cleansed with the power of fire, as Jerry here will be finding out for himself soon enough. There's two things that make them really dangerous though: the fact that they never get tired and their ridiculously overwhelming numbers. Try fighting one of these freaks mano a mano and you're already screwed, but the problem is that there's never just one. If you so much as sneeze when one's around, then the next thing you know, you've got an entire tsunami of the undead barreling down on your ass. And all that it takes is just one bite before you're joining the party, comrade. Now imagine that you're stuck in the middle of a city full of these things, and you should probably start to see the problem here. So alright, now that we've established what we're up against, I think that it's time to start talking about some strategy. Our good buddy, the sympathetic nervous system, has already probably kicked you into fight or flight mode, and hopefully it chose flight, because fighting here isn't really much of an option at all. I don't care how brave you are, the last thing you want to do is get caught throwing hands with one of those sprinters, because before you know it, 30 more of them will be on their way. What you need to do instead is put as much distance as possible between yourself and the horde, and then find a place where you can temporarily hide out and fortify your position while you wait for the initial turmoil of the outbreak to wind down. Nobody's saying that this is going to be easy, but if you're creative, then there are ways that you might be able to use the chaos to your advantage. Like, for example, one of the only advantages that you have over one of these infected is their low intelligence. So you have to take any opportunity that you have to use that factor against them. Like, let's say you're being chased by one through the streets. That's when you need to use any dangers in your environment, like a speeding garbage truck, the gaps between rooftops, or even large crowds of other people to lose them. Remember, you don't need to run faster than the zombie to get away, you just need to run faster than the guy next to you. And if there was ever a situation that called for using other pedestrians as meat shields, then trust me, this is definitely it. If you're lucky enough to even survive the first wave, then it's only going to get worse from there, so once the zombies start showing up, it's time for all forms of common courtesy to go right out the window. Maybe we can all get together and sing Kumbaya later on, but right now, it's every man, woman, and child for themselves. Now, if Jerry and his family stay where they are, then they'll have about the same chances of survival as a baby sea turtle that just hatched from an egg. Their ultimate goal here should be to get out of the city entirely, and for that, they're going to need to find another vehicle, since it looks like the Volvo is going to be spending some time in the shop. There should be plenty of abandoned ones around that they could take, which, as it turns out, is actually what Jerry here is about to do. Thanks to that plot armor that we mentioned before, you're going to see that he already knows pretty much exactly what to do in any given situation. But what if you weren't lucky enough to find a ride? In that case, they'd need to escape on foot. The key here would be to lose the sprinters however you can, and then quickly take shelter on the top floors of a tall building. This will give you an easily defensible location with a good view of the city, so that you can keep tabs on what's going on and when it looks like it's safe to keep moving. You just need to make sure that you have a backup escape route in case the infected find your hideout. Obviously, it couldn't hurt to pick up a weapon somewhere along the way. Some firepower would be great, but anything that they're able to get their hands on is better than nothing. When they can, they'll want to keep moving out of the city and as far away from any population centers as possible, because the virus spreads from person to person. Out in the country, there should be less people to get infected, and therefore less infected in general, because they have no prey out there. They'll also want to stay away from any refugee camps, police stations, military bases, or anything like that. These kinds of locations might seem like a safe bet at first, but you have to remember that the zombies will always be drawn towards anywhere where there are large groups of uninfected people. Finally, they'll want to get an idea of the bigger picture and find out if this is a global event or something more local, since that's going to dramatically affect their long-term plans for survival. In the chaos, Jerry witnesses a man get bitten by one of the infected, and he learns that it only takes about 12 seconds for the victim to fully transform, after which they instantly fly into an uncontrollable rage and start blindly attacking the first uninfected person that they see. The good news is that Walter White was here and left his RV unlocked, providing Jerry and his family with the perfect vehicle to make their escape. They have to fight off a few overzealous hitchhikers along the way, but they're able to make it out just as the military completely loses control and the entire city descends into a total war zone. Rachel begins to have an asthma attack, forcing Gary to pull off the side of the road where her sister finds a hunting rifle stashed in one of the closets. At the same time, they get a call from his friend Terry, a high-ranking official at the UN, and he explains that New York City was lost too. He says that he'll be able to send them a helicopter, but he's not doing all of that just out of the kindness of his heart. He needs Jerry's help to figure out what's going on and hopefully find a way to stop the infection before it's too late. The family eventually finds themselves in Newark, New Jersey, and after a nerve-wracking trip to the grocery store, they spot a high-rise apartment building where it looks like they'll be able to take shelter until the morning when Terry can send over a chopper. The coast looks clear at first, but just as they're getting to the door, a burning car suddenly explodes at the other end of the street, drawing a horde of sprinters to the source of the noise. With the zombies closing in, they quickly duck into the building and use a fire hose on the wall to temporarily hold the doors shut from the inside. It can't keep them back forever, but it's enough to give his family a crucial head start as they run for the safety of the upper floors. After reaching a dead end, they realize that they've somehow lost track of Connie, but end up finding the girl standing at the door of another infected family's apartment, who helpfully let Jerry and his family inside. While the others settle in, Jerry overhears an emergency broadcast saying that the infection is believed to be some form of unidentified virus, and that they should be prepared to remain in the shelter for as long as 2 weeks. Okay, damn. Talk about a close call. After barely escaping Philly the first time around, I'm not sure what the hell possessed them to go to Newark next. I guess you could say that they needed supplies and to meet their ride, but I'm sure that there are still some grocery stores and a place to land a helicopter that aren't also in one of the most densely populated cities on the entire East Coast. Anyway, clearly Jerry doesn't need my help here, but for the rest of us, this probably wouldn't have been the smartest decision. Now, Gary here's just learned something very important. The radio broadcast was the second one to explain what's causing the outbreak is some sort of virus, and if that's the case, then it could be possible to just wait it out. Generally speaking, viruses need a living host to replicate, which means that if you could just hold out long enough that all of the zombies die, then you should be in the clear. Specifically, the earlier reports compared this virus to rabies, and that's significant for one major reason. Similar to this virus, the rabies virus is spread through the saliva of an infected animal, aka through a bite, and it's 100% fatal in all cases, with the infected person dying from the disease in as few as 2 to 10 days after they first start showing symptoms. With any luck, if this means that Jerry and his family are able to survive for just 2 weeks, then most of the zombies who were infected on day 1 might just start dropping dead on their own. And then they'll be home free without so much as lifting a finger. Waiting is the easy part. It's avoiding being bitten in the process that's the real challenge. Right now, they have 2 choices: find a place to hold up or stay on the move. And there are risks and benefits associated with each one. Basically, staying on the move gives you options, but runs the risk of you being noticed. Whereas staying put keeps you hidden, but there's the risk of being caught and trapped with nowhere to run. Neither choice is going to be ideal, and ultimately it's going to come down to what options you have at any given moment. Personally, if it wasn't for the fact that Jerry here is such a chill guy that the freaking United Nations already has a military rescue chopper on the way to get him out, then I'd suggest that they hold up here for at least a little while and wait to see how things shake out. They have food, shelter, and a supply of clean water, so as long as they remember to have an escape plan in case things go south, then they should be able to catch their breath here in the apartment. Lucky for them, they already have a ride out of town, but they'll still need to get there alive first, so it couldn't hurt to make some preparations. Jerry here is about to make himself some custom body armor, which actually sounds like a great idea, but they could also make shields out of furniture or things like cabinet doors, that is. if the family who lives there doesn't mind them tearing up their apartment. They could also try simply layering up with thick clothing like a leather jacket, since extra layers would make it harder for the zombie bites to get through. Karen should also get her hands on a weapon, but they'll want to avoid getting into a fight for as long as possible because the noise will only draw more sprinters. Knowing this, they should remind the kids to be as quiet as possible and come up with a system to communicate using hand signals instead of speaking out loud whenever they're in a dangerous spot. Since the zombies are attracted to noise, they could also try using this against them by luring them away from their objectives somehow, like having Jerry sneak out on his own to the other side of the building and then create a loud noise to draw the zombies over there instead, which should clear up the path for he and his family to get up to the roof. The next morning, Jerry tries to warn the other family that they'll have better odds of survival if they keep moving, but they're determined to stay in their home no matter what. He and his family still need to meet their chopper on the roof, but he knows that they'll probably run into some trouble along the way. So while the others are getting ready to go, he uses some duct tape to upgrade his weapon and straps some paper magazines to his forearms as makeshift body armor. With Jerry leading the way, they're suddenly ambushed by an infected who was already lurking there in the darkness, and the noise from the attack gets the attention of every other zombie in the entire building. His family runs up the stairs while Jerry holds back the wave of zombies for as long as he can, but he's finally overwhelmed just as the chopper arrives to get them. At the last second, the other family's son, Tommy, manages to save his life, and the two of them rush to meet the others outside. It turns out that the boy's apartment had been attacked minutes after Jerry and his family left, and although his parents didn't make it, Tommy was able to escape. They can't relax yet though, because more of the zombies are on their way, but the chopper arrives just in time for the five of them to jump on board. After a long flight 200 miles out into the Atlantic Ocean, they finally arrive aboard a Navy ship and meet up with Terry. While Karen and the girls get some rest in their bunks, Terry gives him a rundown of what he knows so far. And the situation isn't looking good. But one of their best scientists has an idea for how they might be able to stop it. He's convinced that the infection must come from a virus, which means that it might still be possible to develop a vaccine. But in order to make one, they need to know how it first started. According to their information, the first message reporting a zombie attack came from a US base in South Korea. So they're sending Gary along with the doctor and a team of Navy SEALs to check it out. Hours later, the pilot wakes them up as they're approaching the camp's runway, but moments after first touching down, they're immediately charged by one of the sprinters, forcing the crew to open fire, and everyone instantly begins to panic. Terrified, the doctor sprints back up the landing ramp, but accidentally slips and is killed before Jerry can stop him. It looks like this mission is over before it even started, but just then, another team of soldiers who've been surviving at the camp come to their rescue and hustle them into their safe house before they're completely overwhelmed. Once they're safely inside, Jerry explains that he's here looking for a cure, and the captain brings him to the scene where the outbreak at the camp first started. While out in the field, the camp's doctor was bitten by a man who was supposed to be dead, and turned when he got back to the base before going on a rampage that infected dozens of the others. They were able to get things back under control, but any records of where the virus might have originated from were destroyed in the fire that broke out during the attack. This leaves Jerry with another dead end, but there's someone else here at the base who's about to point him in the right direction. In one of the prisoner cells, there's a former CIA officer who was arrested for selling weapons to enemy countries. This guy's a bit of a whack job, and he has knowledge that Jerusalem somehow sealed off the entire city just a few days before the outbreak started, almost as if they knew that it was coming, and tells Jerry to meet with an intelligence agent named Jurgen Warburn for answers. The next step is to get Jerry back to his plane, but it won't be easy. The soldiers wait for the cover of a rainstorm to mask their sound, and then quietly set out while Jerry and his pilot ride on bicycles towards the airstrip. For a minute, it looks like their plan is working, but just then, Jerry here gets a call from his wife, and the whole plan instantly develops into a full-blown show. The captain quickly rushes in with the fuel truck, clearing a path through the horde, while the other soldiers cover them from up on the rooftops. They end up making it to the plane just in time, but the captain and the last of the SEALs are killed during the attack, leaving only Jerry and the pilot still alive as the plane takes off and the remaining zombies are sent tumbling out of the cargo hold. Well, that was a total disaster. They flew all the way to South Korea in the heat of a full-blown zombie apocalypse, learned just about nothing, and got a dozen people, including the nation's top virologist, who, by the way, was the closest person to creating a cure, killed in the process. So I think it's safe to say that this little escapade did not go as planned. At least Captain Plot Armor himself is still kicking, and trust me, he's only just getting started. Let's take a look at where it all went wrong and see if we can't come up with some potential solutions. One thing that they did right was try to remain as quiet as possible, since by now everyone has figured out that the zombies are attracted to noise. What I'm not still understanding is how no one has come up with the idea yet to use this attraction to noise to their advantage. It seems like a no-brainer to me. Get it? No-brainer? Because zombies? Anyway, send a smaller team out as a distraction or something next time. Let them lure the zombies away from the plane by making a lot of noise somewhere else, and then while they quietly circle back to the base, you can get the plane all fueled up without getting the attention of every sprinter in the country. With that being said, something important to notice from the first encounter is that the noise from them landing the plane wasn't actually what attracted the zombies. One zombie came to investigate and attack, but it wasn't until they killed that zombie that the rest of the horde decided to show up. This means that you want to avoid fighting them at any chance that you can, because killing one will only make the situation worse, since even if you manage to take it down quietly, the others might still sense it somehow, and immediately swarm to your location. Just like the noise factor, this can also be used against them if you're creative. You just have to be careful that whatever you're about to do is worth the risk of getting them all pissed off. As for the rest of their strategy, it was actually pretty damn good, besides Jerry the moron forgetting to put his phone on silent and getting everyone killed. The bikes were a great idea to help them travel as fast as possible without making a lot of noise, but they missed an opportunity to make the trip even easier. Since they already knew what route they were going to take, they could have snuck out beforehand and set up traps to take out multiple zombies along the way. This is a military base after all, so they should have plenty of stuff that goes boom. Following that same line of thinking, they could have also created diversions, either by using explosives or sound devices as a way to redirect the zombies away from the plane if and when they ended up in a bad situation. Now, before we get going to Jerusalem, there's one last thing that I want to point out. We've learned here from our time that Jerry's 12-second rule for infection is not necessarily true. Someone can get bitten and last for a while longer before going full zombie. Perhaps certain people are naturally more resistant to the virus for some reason, and that's something that the people in charge should look into as a potential cure, while Jerry is still out in the field trying to track down the virus's original source. After a long flight, they finally arrive at the Jerusalem airport, and for once, they find that the city is still standing, at least for now. Jerry is quickly taken to meet with Jurgen, where he learns how they've managed to do so much better than anywhere else. It turns out that they've intercepted a message from the Indian military early on about a zombie outbreak, but unlike other countries, they decided to take it seriously. Although the majority thought it was nothing to worry about, in his organization, 1 out of every 10 agents has to assume that the other 9 are wrong, no matter how unlikely that may be. In this case, he was the 10th man, and he just so happened to be right. Essentially, their survival boiled down to a lucky guess, but it worked. And although they still have no idea where the disease originated from, they've been taking in as many refugees as possible, in hopes of defeating the outbreak by cutting off its food supply. So far, the plan has been working, but nobody survives for long when Jerry is around. At that exact moment, the loud noise of the celebrating crowd gets the zombies' attention, causing them to instinctively form ladders out of their own damn bodies and scale right over the city walls. In a matter of seconds, chaos erupts as hundreds of zombies begins flooding over the walls and crashing down into the streets below. forcing Jerry and everyone else to run for their lives. Jerry quickly joins up with a group of soldiers who start rushing him back through the streets towards his plane. They avoid a few near-death experiences along the way, but eventually their path forward is cut off by another horde of the undead, and they decide to duck into a nearby building for shelter. During the attack, Jerry notices something incredibly strange. There's a sick-looking boy caught out in the open, but for some reason the zombies completely ignore him as if he isn't even there. The soldiers actually manage to hold off the horde for now, but just when it looks like they're safe, a straggling biter lunges up and takes a chomp out of the woman named Segan's hand. All of a sudden, Jerry grabs a machete and slices the woman's hand off with one swift chop. It's a brutal solution for sure, but she's going to thank him later, because to everyone's surprise, the woman doesn't turn. Okay, I've got to hand it to you, Jerry. That was some pretty quick thinking right there. You might want to ask someone's permission first before you go amputating any limbs next time around, but since she didn't turn into the zombie, I guess that we can let it slide. Now, let's take a quick break from the action for just a second to catch up and go over what we've just learned. Since Jerry's back alley operation here was a success, it seems to be the case that you can stop the infection if you're able to isolate the bite wound before the virus fully passes into the victim's bloodstream. That's good to know, but the only problem is that it goes against what we heard back in South Korea. The soldiers there said that the infected didn't turn for about 10 minutes after they'd been bitten, and the doctor from their base lasted even longer than that. What this means is that Sergen here could still turn at any second, so I'd be keeping a close eye on her just in case. But it's good to at least have an option that you know might save someone's life if they catch a bite. During their escape, Jerry and the soldiers made good use of a choke point between the buildings to give them some space from the horde. We should keep this move in mind the next time that we're being pursued by a large group and try to squeeze into a tighter area so that the sprinters will be forced to bottle up, which might even cause them to get stuck on each other for a moment like they did here. The only thing that Jerry can do right now is keep moving as quickly and safely as he can until he's able to get back to the plane at the airport. For anyone else, this would be a damn near impossible task, but I think it's already a foregone conclusion here that Jerry won't have much of a problem. This leaves us to focus on the bigger picture, and although we still don't know where the virus came from, Jurgen made a great point about cutting off the zombies' food supply by taking in survivors. In order to get control back, the world governments should gather as many survivors as they can into fortified communities. And without any new victims to infect, the virus should die out on its own. The problem here is that any large group of people will make too much noise and inevitably end up attracting them anyway, so it needs to be a calculated risk. As for me, it still seems like the best bet is just to take off on your own somewhere, far out into the middle of nowhere. Dig a moat around your house and fill it with gasoline. In the meantime, Jerry's still working on figuring out that vaccine, but he's about to have an idea that changes everything. After getting her bandaged up, they finally make it to the airport just as Jerry's pilot decides that he's seen enough and leaves his ass for dead, which is honestly the smartest move that anyone has made so far. Their luck hasn't run out yet though, and they're able to board a commercial airplane full of other civilians just as it's about to take off. While disinfecting Surgeon's arm, Jerry starts to wonder why the zombies seem to completely ignore certain people like the sick boy that he noticed during the attack. And this gives him an idea. Using his emergency satellite phone, he's able to get a call through to Terry and explains that he needs him to locate the nearest World Health Organization research facility where they have supplies to make vaccines. After handing the phone over to the pilots, they decide that they're going to land at an airport in Wales, which should hopefully get him close enough to the facility located nearby. The only problem is, this plane is never going to make it there in one piece. While everyone is getting some rest, one of the flight attendants opens a storage closet at the back of the plane, only to be attacked by a stowaway zombie that was lurking inside. Almost instantly, the zombies begin rampaging through the back half of the plane, and Jerry silently motions for the other passengers in his section to barricade the aisles off with as much luggage as they can gather. It's a decent plan, but it can't hold them back forever, and the zombies quickly break through, threatening to infect everyone on board. Cornered, Jerry realizes that he has no choice but to deploy a grenade, blowing a giant hole in the side of the fuselage that sends the zombies plummeting down to Earth as they're sucked out due to the explosive decompression. That takes care of the zombies, but now they have a whole different problem because this plane is going down. The plane tears apart on impact with the ground, killing every uninfected person and zombie left on board, besides Jerry and Segan, but he's badly injured with a sharp hunk of metal having impaled him through the side of his stomach. With help from Segan, Jerry travels on foot through the nearby empty town until they finally reach the medical research facility, where he collapses from exhaustion and pain just outside the front door. Okay, if you're anything like me, then you probably went into this thinking that the zombies would be the biggest danger in the zombie apocalypse. But I think that we've learned over the course of the last hour that Jerry here is the real threat to society as we know it. He may not have f***ed up in the way that we usually see, but there's no denying that everywhere he goes, Jerry leaves a path of untold death and destruction in his wake. And it's so bad that I really think that we should take a moment and let it all sink in. Remember all the way back to that nice family in Newark who so selflessly took Jerry and his family in? Well, they didn't last 12 hours after Jerry the Grim Reaper Lane here showed up on their doorstep, and that's pretty good compared to his other victims if you can believe it. They might have just survived fine up there in their apartment until he came along with every zombie in the city hot on his trail, tore down the barricade that they'd made in the staircase, used them for food, supplies, and shelter, and then dipped out just as the sprinters knocked down their door. That kid Tommy is literally an orphan now because of Jerry here, and somehow it only gets worse. Next stop, South Korea, where Jerry single-handedly wiped out an entire military base of trained soldiers by forgetting to put his phone on silent. Even this couldn't satisfy his bloodlust for long enough, because then it was off to Jerusalem to cause even more unprecedented destruction. Alright, so that one technically wasn't his fault if you blame it on the crowd. But when you really think about it, it seems like the sound of a whole-ass military cargo plane landing at the airport would be just a bit louder than a few people singing a song. So he certainly contributed to the city's demise, if nothing else. Now, the plane incident, that was just the icing on the cake, and as usually happens whenever anyone is foolish enough to let Jerry on board, no survivors. Man, if I were the people at this WHO facility, I'd lock the doors and pretend that no one's home before he gets us all killed next. At least he's finally in a place where he can tell them his idea for the vaccine. But the problem is, it's going to get more complicated than he thinks. Hopefully he can still redeem himself, but when you wind up being more dangerous than the zombies themselves, Jerry, you f***ed up! When Jerry eventually wakes up, 3 full days have already passed. Segan is there too, still alive and well except for her missing hand, and now it's time for Jerry to explain the plan. He says what they need is an extremely deadly but curable disease as a possible way to stop the outbreak. From his experiences out in the field, he's noticed a few strange incidents where the zombies seemed to completely ignore a particular person for no clear reason. To Jerry, the connecting factor must be that all of these people were terminally ill or otherwise injured, and that the infected chose to ignore them because the virus is naturally aware that it needs healthy hosts in order to continue to spread. By making everyone in the world sick with another disease, they can essentially make themselves invisible to the zombies, using the illness like a form of camouflage, which will allow them to cut off the virus's food supply, create new pockets of society, and gradually begin to take cities back. The doctors agree that this plan is so crazy that it just might work. But there's one major problem standing in their way. All of their disease samples are located in the facility's B-Wing, and it's already been completely overrun by the undead. After gearing up with some more duct tape armor and grabbing a few improvised weapons, Jerry and Segan are almost ready to make the trip. The facility's head doctor has decided that he's going with them too, and although his team aren't huge fans of the idea, he's convinced that they'll quickly get lost without someone who already knows their way around the building. As the 3 of them cross the threshold into the abandoned wing, the doctor gives his colleagues permission to seal them in if anything tries to get through the doors before they make it back. While the others watch them over the security cameras, Jerry, Segan, and the doctor begin cautiously making their way deeper and deeper into the abandoned wing. Eventually, they come to a lab where a half dozen of the zombies are trapped inside, and have to move carefully one at a time past the glass doorway so that they won't be noticed. Although it's a close call, they manage to make it past without setting off the alarm. But their luck isn't going to hold out forever. The lab that they need is located on the floor below, and so far they've managed not to blow their cover. But while he's distracted by one of the zombies, the doctor accidentally slams into a metal waste container, causing a loud bang. The zombie instantly spins around and zeroes in on Jerry, with Segan abruptly opening fire, saving his life. But now every other zombie in the building knows exactly where they are. Terrified, Jerry and the others immediately take off running towards the vault with the zombies in close pursuit. When they eventually come to a fork in the hallways, Jerry makes the game time decision to split off from the group, making as much noise as possible in the hopes of getting as many zombies as he can to chase after him instead. Meanwhile, Segan and the doctor make it to the lab only to find out that it's completely cut off by biters, leaving them no way to get through. Luckily, they're still able to make it back to safety and barricade the doors at the last possible moment, but Jerry is still trapped inside. With the bulk of the zombies distracted by the others, Jerry finally finds his way to the vault. Without the doctor's help, he has no idea which disease samples will actually work. So he does the next best thing and just starts gathering up as many of them as he can into a small metal box. Now that he has what he came for, it's time for Jerry to head back to safety. But that's when he realizes that there's a zombie doctor blocking his only exit, and he left his only weapon on the other side of the door. Considering his options, Jerry realizes that there's only one thing left for him to do. He's going to have to try the experiment on himself, but without the doctor's advice, he has no way to know which sample to use. With no other choice, he holds up a clipboard to the security camera with a message for the others to tell his family that he loves them, before selecting one of the samples at random and injecting himself with the unknown disease.
Okay, now, you hold up just a damn minute. You mean to tell me that after everything we've been through, all of the countless lives lost so we could be here, we're leaving the fate of mankind up to a lucky guess? What in the actual is going on right now? I know that I'm not the most genius level scientist in the room, but can anyone tell me which one of these brainiacs thought that it would be a good idea to send Jerry here on a death mission, or at the very least, a list of which disease samples to grab once he got there? That's a level of stupid that I wouldn't have even thought possible to achieve until witnessing it with my own two eyeballs. The truth is that the plan was botched from the very beginning. The doctor should have drawn them up a map of the area instead of going in with them for two reasons. Less people means less noise to attract zombies, and society is still going to need his doctoring skills to make the vaccine. Also, when Jerry was deciding which bottle to choose, they could have easily used the security camera to signal yes or no if they thought he was able to control it. I thought that these were supposed to be smart people here, but clearly I must have been wrong about that one. Now, I don't think that I even need to go into all of the reasons why just picking a bottle randomly out of a box full of the deadliest diseases known to man is an insanely bold move. Hopefully, he didn't inject himself with the bubonic plague, but I guess that now all we can do is just wait and see.
After waiting for what seems like long enough for the infection to really set in, Jerry gathers his courage and opens the door. The zombie shuffles in, clicking its teeth directly in his face, but as luck would have it, it walks right past Jerry like he's not even there. The plan worked. Taking the samples, Jerry uses a soda machine to lure the remaining zombies away from the secure area, passing right between the horde as they charge in the opposite direction. Once he's back in the lab, the doctors are able to inject him with a vaccine for the mystery disease. And now they finally have their secret weapon. Sometime later, Jerry is finally able to reunite with his family, who are safely waiting for him at a military facility in Nova Scotia. For the rest of the world, there's still a long way to go, but now, with the discovery of this new vaccine, they're able to start taking the world back from the infected one city at a time. He may have gotten nearly everyone he crossed paths with killed along the way, but in the end, Jerry learned a valuable lesson. When it comes to surviving a zombie apocalypse, the best defense is always an insane amount of plot armor.
But what would you do? Honestly, if there's a zombie outbreak, I'm surviving that mother. Straight up. My friends and my family always tell me, oh dude, you're gonna be the first one to design a zombie apocalypse. You're so lazy. You do, you know what I'm saying? I can see you dying first in a zombie apocalypse. Man, you know how many Die Hard movies I've seen? You know how many Rambo movies I've seen? I know how to survive in the jungle. I pick up a zombie like this. Come here, zombie, which is to say that, you know what I mean? Ain't no zombie taking the kid down, but let me know what you would do down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'll catch you guys in the next video and have a damn good day.